I had a gym friend, a friend that I would see at the gym, and I noticed she kept getting like darker and darker in her eyes, and she would complain a lot about where she lived and her job, and seemed very negative, and I didn't know really what was going on. And then she all of a sudden looked better, and I said, "Oh my goodness, you look better. How are you doing?" Come to find out, she had been suicidal, and she had gone to the doctor feeling all of these symptoms, feeling suicidal. And the doctor actually brought up maybe hormones, and she's like, no, my mom went through some things with that. I don't want to do that. So she got on antidepressants, which weren't helping much. And she got to the point where she asked her best friend, come get my guns because I don't trust myself. That's how bad it had gotten. Finally, she got on hormone replacement therapy, and she actually thanked me. She's like, you were the one that mentioned it too, and that really helped. And she got on hormone replacement therapy, and with 2 weeks, she was fine. So was she perimenopausal or was she suicidal? Well, she was perimenopausal. And that's what we're going to talk about today, because there's such a lack of education about perimenopausal and menopause and postmenopausal and how that can actually affect us. And it's so challenging and actually really touches me, obviously, in a personal way, because of my whole experience that I've been through. It's a big deal in my life because I became very sensitive to my hormones when I was misdiagnosed in 2001 with bipolar disorder. And at the time, it was a destructive relationship, postpartum, an undiagnosed thyroid issue, all conglomerated to this bipolar diagnosis, which unfortunately left me in a destructive situation for a long time, having that misdiagnosis. Anyways, it was a very big setup for me to learn about hormones and to learn all about a lot of things. Also, I have a pre-med degree, which is just enough to get me in trouble because I'll know a lot of it, but I won't know the whole thing. And that's been a challenge, but yet I do have the background that helps me. And any of us can understand this. We're all able to understand this. We just have to take piece by piece and learn more and more. So that really made me interested in hormones because without a thyroid, that really affects our bodies. And that was or having thyroid challenges. And then I went and had a thyroidectomy because I thought I had thyroid cancer. And so that was another misdiagnosis. And that was in 2011. And because of those two things, I've had to be very sensitive to my hormones and very aware. And then getting in my own perimenopause and how that affected me. And I immediately looked into natural hormone replacement, and it was life-changing. And now I'm in menopause. And so I'll just talk about a whole bunch of things, but this affects all of us. It'll affect 50% of the population if you're a woman, and better to learn about this if you're young. Than if you're going through the symptoms, because it's a lot harder when our brains aren't working well. And if this is a guy listening to it, it's not uncommon. You're going to have an aunt or wife, somebody that's going through this, and this will give you a greater understanding. So this affects a lot of us, and that's why I'm doing this podcast. So I'm not a doctor. Again, pre-med degrees. Please see your practitioner who specializes in this. And the challenges in the U.S., doctors here receive only a few hours of direct menopause education, if at all any, during their training, which contributes this huge gap in the recognition management of midlife symptoms. And so many of them are misdiagnosed and put on antidepressants, which has a whole host of challenges with it. So this is happening everywhere. Women are undiagnosed, and if it's not antidepressants, it's anti-anxiety medication. And hormones affect us in so many ways. So what is perimenopause? Perimenopause can start in your late 30s or sometimes mid-30s and early 40s, and it can last 4 to 10 years before menopause. And basically, our hormones start to fluctuate wildly before they start declining. And for me, this happened in my late 30s, and my PMS symptoms went from just a few days to a week and longer, where I just wanted to eat people. I just felt the anger and the brain fog, and so I immediately took care of that, because in my line of work as a real estate agent, that doesn't work, because it is more of a high-stress job, and that wasn't going to work if I was going to eat everybody. So that is why I got on that. And also, it's interesting, a little bit before that, before my symptoms got worse, I actually developed an exercise intolerance, which is kind of wild. I would exercise, and I would do anything with weights, and I would want to gag or I would throw up, and it made me feel very sick. And I'm like, there's something wrong. It must be testosterone. But according to my doctors, it looked normal, but I kept researching it, and I could not exercise and lift weights for 3 years. And exercising and lifting weights was a regular part of my lifestyle that I really enjoyed. Finally, I saw a naturopath, and I said, I really think this is what it is. And he tested me. He's like, well, you're slightly low. He's like, well, let's try some testosterone cream and see if that helps. Within 3 days, I could exercise with weights again. So, perimenopause, all of that is not just estrogen, it's progesterone, it's testosterone, and honestly affects all of our hormones. So it's a very big deal. And so that's one of the reasons why I've been so interested in studying it for all these years, is the personal effect on me and also the people I know. Our emotional cups can get full without us really even being aware of it. But when our emotional cups get full, we can react rather than respond. We can be fatigued. We can feel burdened. We have struggle with sleep. We can have physical symptoms. And that's why I have the free barf notebook page for you. And it's a simple process done regularly where you're barfing out your thoughts, sorting them out, and planning them out. And it's a wealth of healing in that. So go ahead and check the link and have access to that free barf notebook process. Live brighter every day. So what is menopause? Menopause is actually just one day. It is 12 consecutive months. It's not having a period for 12 consecutive months. So, and then it's that day, menopause. And everything after that one day event is post-menopause. So we always talk about menopause, and I do it too. But we're actually talking about pre-menopause, the day of menopause, and post-menopause. The interesting thing is there are so many surprising symptoms that people don't recognize. A lot of us think, oh, hot flashes, but there's so much more to it. So let's just break this down. We're going to break it down into different parts of our body, brain and mood. So it's not uncommon. You can have suicidal ideations, anxiety out of nowhere, rage, panic attacks, ADHD-like symptoms, brain fog, loss of confidence, crying spells, and loss of motivation. Women can quit their careers, they can get divorced because of the symptoms. I'm not against divorce for other things, but if it's just our symptoms, then that we want to be at a healthy place when we're considering anything like that, big changes in our life, whatever the changes. Then it affects our body, our physical body. Frozen shoulder, that's where the shoulder just, gets basically frozen and they have to have shoulder surgery. That is actually a post-menopause symptom, not just a shoulder issue. Joint pain, also the recovery of joints and tendons, hip strains, heart palpitations, itchy ears, burning mouth, weight gain around the abdomen. That's one that's very common. And you can all of a sudden start noticing, it's like, wow, I'm doing the same, but I'm gaining weight in my abdomen area. That's a good sign of the premenopause and menopause and postmenopause. Sleep disruptions, waking up at 3 a.m. That's a common one. Migraine. Then it also affects the sexual health. Low libido, painful intercourse, vaginal dryness. And those are all preventable, workable. And it can really be a challenge in a relationship, in a marriage, if you're struggling with those things. And so I really feel like we have to honor our marriages and be like, okay, what can I do about this? And there's a lot we can do. And that's the cool thing. So why do we have a whole host of people that have avoided hormone replacement therapy, just like my friend in the gym? My friend in the gym had a mom that really struggled, but most people struggle with a problem with hormone replacement therapy based on propaganda and a lot of stuff that came out about a 2002 study. And that 2002 study basically caused a massive fear about hormone replacement, and they said it would cause potential breast cancer, and many women stopped hormones abruptly. The challenge is that hormone, the World Health Initiative study, was with older women averaging age 63, not newly menopausal women. They were using oral synthetic hormones, and the increase of risk of breast cancer was actually relatively small. So that was very interesting. So the follow-up data has really softened many of those conclusions. But because of that, hormone replacement therapy, HRT, dropped dramatically. Women were left untreated, and there's a whole generation that has suffered. So what does modern hormone replacement therapy look like? because it's not just getting on the pill, because that can actually have its own challenge. What I'm talking about is bioidentical hormones, lab tests, because it's really interesting. If you don't test your labs and have someone that can read your labs that actually know, that's testing all the things, because it's not just estrogen and testosterone. There's actually free testosterone. There's different forms of each of them that actually make a clearer picture. So it's not, you got to make sure that the tests are actually the good tests that help. And the challenge is insurance companies often don't even cover, which we need to start pressuring insurance companies, because it's in their benefit, because it's so preventative. Because women that are not on hormone replacement therapy, it has a huge risk of cardiovascular, bone protection, brain protection, improved mood, all sorts of things. So it's huge. So what I'm talking about, bioidentical hormones, that's a transdermal, that means on your skin, estrogen patches. They can be expensive, and there are ways to get them cheaper, and that's really good to know about. And I'm talking about micronized estrogen. That means it's from a compound company, and if you're going to a doctor that's like, hey, I don't use compounding companies, that's a red flag, because compound companies are they are FDA approved prescriptions, but they're able to dose it in a way that is much more able to be for the person and much more specific, not just, hey, you got A and B choice and that's it. So microdose progesterone, vaginal estrogen, that's a big deal, because people, another big challenge with postmenopausal is UTIs. That's huge. And it's super common that women in nursing homes die of UTIs. And so vaginal estrogen is a huge preventative for UTIs. And testosterone, that's a big deal too. Like I said, testosterone was actually the first hormone I ended up going on. It's not just a male hormone. And it can really make a difference in females. And it's not just sexual desire, because that actually didn't affect me at all. It was just how my body metabolized waste products from exercising, and I couldn't even build muscle. So at all, not being bulky, but build muscle at all. So testosterone is a really important hormone for women as well. So the benefits of being on hormone replacement therapy, bioidentical hormones, meaning it matches more our natural, it's not from like cow pee or something like that, or horse pee. But it's more naturally mimicking our bodies and more from natural sources, not always, is you have the reduced cardiovascular risk. So that's a big, as far as women having heart attacks, people don't realize how I think that's the second thing that women die of. And that is very much preventable, and hormone replacement therapy, bioidentical, makes a big impact on that. Also, bone protection, like I mentioned, fractures are a huge deal. And we hear about postmenopausal women and hip fractures. Having the hormones regulated and having those hormones is huge protection for the bones. Brain protection, that's huge. As you may know, women are more likely to have dementia and Alzheimer's. That's because, our estrogen receptors and it's one of the biggest places is our brain. And so it's really important for protection of that by having our hormones. Improved mood, oh wow, boy howdy, we could talk about that all day. Sexual health restoration, that can make a big difference, because nobody wants to have sex if it's painful and hurting. That's for sure. Also, it helps prevent things like we get an increase of allergies, food sensitivities, gingivitis, and eye challenges with postmenopausal, that whole time period. And so it's protection against that. And I really like Dr. Kelly Casperson, and I'm going to give you some resources to her near the end. And she often emphasizes that libido loss is not a personal flaw. It's often hormonal, and that's important to know. So estrogen in the brain is a big deal, and it's not just estrogen and progesterone and testosterone. When we're going through perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause, we're talking about a whole host, because hormones all affect each other. So we're talking about insulin, we're talking about cortisol, they all work together. And for example, estrogen helps regulate serotonin, and it affects dopamine, which impacts our sleep cycle. So again, I want to reiterate that this is a really good protection against dementia and Alzheimer's. And I just want to really just breathe into this and kind of focus this because this is kind of an intense topic and such an important one. But let's put this in perspective. If men lost 80% of their testosterone in 5 years, we would call it a medical emergency. But we are losing 80% of our estrogen in a very short period, and it affects us dramatically. And we need to rise up and be educated and educate for ourselves and advocate for ourselves. So for me, again, as I was gearing up for menopause, all of a sudden I had a huge drop last year of my hormones. And I didn't catch it because usually I'm pretty good about having regular lab tests and really checking. But I was expecting it to be like gradual over time, and it was a drop. And all of a sudden my test results were like, it didn't even measure my testosterone, my estrogen, testosterone, they were gone. And so that caused a whole host of symptoms. And the biggest thing I noticed was my energy went to about 30% of what it typically went. And then I was having all these weird symptoms with my eyes and a host of symptoms. And I didn't realize that menopause, the whole series, there's over 71 symptoms and signs of it, and I probably knew about 10. So it affects so many organs and so many things, and things that are attributed to something else where people get on a medication for this, they get on a medication for that, and that it's all affected by, it could all be affected by the hormone imbalance, and just fixing that could help shift a lot of those things. And so that's important for preventative of getting on multiple medications to fix the symptom, but not the problem. So again, I totally missed it. Huge drop, trying to figure it out. And I just felt horrible. And within 2 weeks of getting my hormones back up to speed, I felt 90% of my energy back. And that was huge. So I really encourage all of us to get more educated. This is the takeaway. You can track your symptoms. You can advocate for yourselves. You can seek menopausal providers, people that have actually studied this, that are open to hormone replacement, Bioidentical. They're open to compounding companies. Again, a lot of doctors are not educated in this way, so a naturopath, a functional medicine doctor may be more in line. But I feel like it's becoming more and more popular because we as women are saying we need this. So find somebody that actually knows what to look for, because also, looking at lab tests, again, I mentioned this, is a doctor can look at it. If they're not educated in the details of this, they could be not measuring or getting the right test and not looking at it as a specialist would, and that can make a big difference. So I really think that we can help by helping us all stop suffering, because suffering is not inevitable. It's not just we're getting older. It could be that you have a hormone challenge with premenopause, menopause, and all of that. So I really want us to all realize that midlife doesn't have to be the slow fading. It can be the recalibration and repurposing, not just getting old, tired, and having all these symptoms that we're like, what do we do with this? It's not just you. So this can affect us holistically. This can affect our identity. It can affect our marriages, our confidence. I know people that have left their jobs and they were performing great, and all of a sudden they weren't, and they thought there was something wrong with them, and it was just their hormones, their mental health, their sexual agency, their financial agency, because if women can't think clearly, we cannot function as well. So again, the next step is seek a specialist for yourself. Educate yourself. Some good resources, The New Menopause by Mary Claire Haver. That book is great. There's also a 3-part interview on YouTube or on the podcast of the Jamie Kern Lima podcast. And also Dr. Kelly Casperson has a podcast and a bunch of educational material. Her podcast is called You Are Not Broken, and she's got some courses too. So there are options out there. So we need to take a breath after that. So just take a deep breath in, a belly breath in, and breathe out. And just relax yourself. That was a lot, I know. So I just want you to think, how has this helped you? What is one next step you can do? And who can you send this podcast to that can help support them? I believe in you. I believe in us all becoming stronger and healthier people. Make it a great day. Take care.